Okay, here we go. Yay, live stuff.
Ooh.
Oh wait, why am I in Avara? Fuck Avara. Oops, I cussed. I know.
I'm taking my children and going home.
I'm so
And
triggered. I'm leaving my own stream.
leaving your own stream because you swore. That's wow.
I know. It's so
This is the
bad.
quality we've come to expect.
I know. This is the quality I can assure you.
The level of quality guaranteed for this podcasting.
I am my own quality assurance. Shit.
Yeah. As a programmer, I can tell you that's a terrible idea. Don't worry, I tested it. It works on my machine.
Oh god. Oh, that's the one thing I always kind of loved. Like doing getting on like the public test servers for like WoW and like messing with the new builds and like the developers would be like, "Oh, it worked on our internal servers."
Right.
And then you just
Well,
fall through the world.
right. Well, I mean, like that's the thing is that they have their internal servers and it takes a process to push it out to an outward facing server. So kind of basically what they're saying is like, look, we know the bug exists, we fixed it. Please stop complaining about it. But it's going, especially something like, oh, we're falling through the world. It's like, well, just ignore that and play on.
Yeah.
Test other things.
Oh my god, I was playing. I bought Arkham Knight recently, even though like everyone complains about it. I I don't hate it. It's not bad. Like all the complaints I heard was because the initial port of it was bad for PC. But they re-released it, and I got like a remastered version, I think, of it. And I hit a bug with the Batmobile, and I just started falling through the world while I was in the middle of a mission. And it happened like 5 times in a row. Like, I'd hit the ground, this particular part of the map, and then I just completely fall through the world, and then it would reposition me at the same exact point that I fell through before, and I'd fall through again, and then it repositioned me again, and the same. I was in a loop.
Right.
And I was in the middle of a chase mission. I was supposed to be chasing something. I'm just like, Warner Brothers.
Right. Well, I mean, sometimes just bugs like that happen, and that's kind of the funny thing. I guess we can start talking about some of the business stuff. Is like QA is kind of seen as a way to get in the games industry, but it's such a terrible thing because people are like, oh, it's playing games all day. It's like, no, it's playing a broken game repeatedly in the same way to see if it's still broken or not. You don't play it for fun. You play it because you have to play it in a certain way.
Right. Yeah.
And,
I was talking to somebody. I'm trying to remember. It was a few years back, but they worked as a Nintendo QA. And they were testing, I think they were talking about testing Twilight Princess, if I remember correctly. And the story they were telling me was that their job was to go through every dungeon and backflip through every single room, every inch of every room, just to make sure the backflip worked every single inch.
Yep. It didn't kind of because there was probably some bug with it where
they'd fall through the world.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so they had to go through and make sure everything was fixed in the right way. And
okay, well we just got a whole bunch of viewers. Welcome everyone to the stream. I'm Malgrim as usual, and I'm joined by Psycho Child. Mitternock won't be joining us tonight.
His dog turned into Chupacabra. Started attacking goats, I think.
Yes. I still want pics of that. Like, that's how you become an Instagram star right there. My dog's Chupacabra.
I mean, yeah.
I found it.
Legit.
I found a mythical creature.
Right.
And today we're talking about the business of game development. Thankfully enough, I have someone who knows much about that.
Hey. Yeah, so I basically I worked I ran my own small company for about a decade called Near Death Studios. I ran the game the MMO called Meridian 59.
Which we might be playing on the stream at some point.
Right. I mean, still, yeah, the game still is running. It's basically running for free now. It's not something it's commercially available commercially anymore, but it is on Steam and people run servers for free. It's open source. But yeah, so I ran that company for about a decade. It was a small company. We had 5 employees at the peak, and I was lead programmer. I did a lot of design, and then I also did basically all the business stuff, business development, tax paperwork, talked with the bookkeeper. I did basic bookkeeping. We had an accountant that would fill out the taxes and all that fun stuff. So, one of the things that kind of came out of that then is I wrote a book called the Business and Legal Primer for Game Development. And then I wrote a lot of my I wrote a lot of blog posts talking about business development. Then I helped edit a book talking about I wrote a book basically talking about basically brought on a lot of people to write individual chapters, and I helped edit the chapters and guide people through what they were writing. And so the book was mostly from kind of an indie point of view, where like if you're going to run your own small game development company, what it takes to do that.
A lot.
Well, yeah, I mean that's. I mean, there's a lot of chapters, and then basically I wrote it with my friend Greg Boyd, who's a lawyer, and he
Shout out.
he basically. Yeah, and so he basically kind of handled a lot of the legal side of things. And it's a really kind of super useful book. I mean, it's a bit older now, so it's not quite as modern and up to date. I mean, kind of the funny story I like to tell about is we talked about how important E3 was, and that the year after we published it, E3 basically stopped, wasn't around for a couple of years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I mean, I lamented that our book was now out of date as soon as we published it, but E3 is back now. But yeah, I mean, and so there's a chapter on how to basically how to read business contracts, like the things you want to look out for. It actually has a sample contract, and it basically kind of goes through step by step and says, this is what this means, this is why they do this, and here's some alternatives or options that like you might be discussed.
If they bring up souls, say no.
Right. They say they want you to prick your finger and sign in blood. Warning. But no, and so like it was just it like I said, it was basically a primer for it was a lot of it was basically just like stuff I wish I knew, like when I was starting to do all this stuff.
Right.
Because I got into it kind of like, sure, let's start our own company. That sounds like fun.
What's the worst that could happen?
Right.
You get sued.
Well, I mean, like, the book will not help you not get sued, because you can get sued for anything. But the long and short of it is, like I know quite a bit about game development and like business, both from an indie point of view, and I've worked for a couple large companies. I've worked for startups, so like there's basically a lot that goes into it, and like I think especially like for gamers, like a lot of times you kind of look at a lot of decisions and you're like, why did they do that? And I mean, and I'm not gonna say every time there's perfectly a logical sense behind it, but like most of the time, there is a valid business reason for doing what they do.
Yeah, like honestly, most business decisions have a legal purpose. Like there's a legal reason behind business decisions.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like at the core, games. I mean, so the problem you run into is that games are still a business, and so a business needs to make profit to survive. As much as like we all love gaming and we all love playing games. At the end of the day, uh, a publisher like EA or a developer like Telltale is a company that I brought up that one for a specific reason.
I had that one in the back of my head, like, oh yeah, we could talk about.
Right.
Nice.
I mean, but that's an example. It's like you can have a company that seems to be doing great on the outside, like seems to be has these really popular games that everybody loves, but it can be really brutal. Like even a pretty well established company like Telltale can basically stumble because probably behind the scenes there's a couple bad business decisions. And I'm not going to armchair quarterback and try to say what happened specifically with Telltale.
Right, it's there's so many, like I've tried to read up on the Telltale stuff, and there's a lot there.
Right. I mean, a lot of times like something like that is tends to be kind of a death by a thousand paper cuts, where it's no one thing like, oh, obviously they made a terrible episode of the Walking Dead game, and therefore nobody played it, and so therefore they went out of business. It's probably not that simple. There's probably like a bunch of little things that happen.
No, like I was watching a video about it. They had a couple of controversies. I can't remember them off the top of my head. Hey, I should have done that research thing that I'm supposed to do.
Maybe you'd be useful in this podcast then.
I'll look it up in a second when I get a.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit I haven't read a whole lot about it, so I just kind of know, just know some of the general stuff I've heard. That's kind of one of the reasons I don't want to kind of armchair quarterback on it. But I think, again, you can kind of look at it as a whole and see that you have this situation, and like, and it really is kind of a tragedy because like nobody wants this. Like the executives. Don't want their company to go away.
Unless they're going via the producers and are trying to make an insurance scam.
Right. Well, I mean, even then, despite being a very large industry, the game industry is a very small place, and something like a company failing is going to kind of haunt you for a bit. So nobody wants their company to kind of go away. The executives, know that a lot of people are going to be out of work, and especially Telltale out in California. California's a very expensive place to work, and it I found Extraction. California's a very expensive place to work, so to live, and so somebody doesn't have a job suddenly, that's kind of a scary thing. And the game industry already pays kind of pretty low, so it's not like a lot of the developers probably had a whole lot of life savings they can kind of pull off of. They're scrambling for jobs. Luckily California has a very good economy, but programmers and artists can probably find other work. But kind of it's the writers and the game designers that are kind of in trouble, because a lot of times that doesn't translate very well into other industries.
Now, one thing I did read about was on Twitter when Telltale, when it was like officially announced that they were shutting down, a whole bunch of the other large publishers and development studios made a hashtag. I forget what the hashtag was, but it was just basically them offering like, hey, we're looking for programmers for this studio and this studio. Feel free to, if you're from Telltale, feel free to. And that kind of shows like the how small the environment is.
Right. There's definitely kind of this attitude of wanting to help out. Kind of, there is a community. But I mean, on the flip side, though, and like, not to be too ghoulish about it, I mean, like, game companies have sometimes a hard time finding the right type of people, because the game industry doesn't pay as well as other industries. Like, if you're a programmer that knows like web technologies, and you have the option to go to Facebook, where they have a very fancy campus, they have they work on very kind of large scale interesting problems. They they have stock options, a lot of these other things, or you have the option to go work at a game company where you're making probably, I forget the exact stat, but I want to say it's like, usually the game industry pays about 70 to 80% of, for programmers, mind you, like, this is, it gets kind of worse if you're not a programmer in high demand. You're not getting Facebook type stock options or Google or whatever.
There's a lot of uncertainty.
And yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty. Exactly. Like, a lot of times the the games industry is very much driven by projects.
Yeah.
And this might be something that happened with Telltale specifically. Is like, maybe they didn't secure licensing for something they needed to, and they had too many employees and not enough projects going.
Well, from what I read, they actually had. Well, I had read. See, some of the research I actually did do.
Right.
They actually had several licensed projects in the works. With some very, very large. But I think that might have been one of those paper cuts where they might have overextended their licensing budget for those projects.
Right. Yeah, I don't know the details of the licensing deals, but yeah, it's, it takes a lot of money to kind of chase these licensing deals. Even if you're not paying it directly, because like you have to have business development people that go and talk and hammer these things out, and a lot of times like you you have to kind of deal with very specific things. It's not a game industry example, but something I read lately. I think it's kind of interesting. The TV show Altered Carbon is based on a book. And in the TV show, the hotel he goes and stays, the main character goes and stays at an AI hotel that's themed like Edgar Allan Poe.
Yep.
Well, in the book, originally Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
And the reason why they changed it is because they went to get licensing rights for Jimi Hendrix for the TV show, and the Hendrix estate is like has limits on what kind of violence you can associate with the Jimi Hendrix name.
Which is really interesting.
Right. And so like this show, the book is a cyberpunk book, so it's like really freaking violent.
Oh, and there's so much violence in that hotel. Like
right. Yeah, in the hotel specifically, like not just in the show, but the hotel specifically. And so like like the Hendrix estate was like, no, this does not meet our requirements, and like everyone else was like, yeah, you're right. And so they had to push it out. They had to change it.
For anyone who hasn't watched Altered Carbon or read the books, I've never read the books. I watched the show. I loved the show, even though it confused the hell out of me at points. In the hotel, the first scene for this super AI hotel involves machine guns coming out of the ceiling and mowing down a whole bunch of like gangster thugs or something, hitmen.
Right.
And like the most gruesome way possible. They show all the blood. It's gruesome.
Right.
So it's understandable for somebody to be like, maybe not with our brand.
Right. And so that kind of shows you the pitfalls of licensing. Because like you really have to kind of make sure that you get the right licensing deal to meet what you need. And I think the kind of the benefit of a company like Telltale is they probably had, probably had business development people that knew what kind of agreement they needed.
Right. And I mean they always did like kind of clever because they'd always take, from what I saw with most of the games, they took IPs that allowed them to be a little gruesome. that they could play with
right.
darker themes, so that they didn't have to worry about, oh, you gotta keep it squeaky clean. Although they did do the Minecraft one, which I think was relatively mild.
Yeah.
But I was actually reading that they had like a Stranger Things game that they were supposed
to. That would be cool.
Yeah, and they were working on like an interactive program for Netflix.
Right, I heard about Netflix that they wanted to kind of do shows that where you kind of influence the development of the story.
Yeah, and I actually just heard that Black Mirror's gonna have an interactive episode in the next season.
Right. Yeah, I think that was the one that they like the article I was reading or whatever talked about specifically.
Yeah, which I'm just not to go on a tangent. I'm like, ooh, that actually sounds really interesting. That'd be something fascinating to see Netflix play with more.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because like a lot of times, just kind of in the past, as a general rule, like whenever kind of game industry and Hollywood have kind of combined forces, it's been pretty freaking terrible. Usually, being a game developer, like I have my biases, but like a lot of the story times I've heard is like Hollywood coming in and saying, "Oh, we know how to tell stories." You game developers kind of get out of the way. But like on the flip side, like I know like game developers that have kind of movie developer envy. With Cage and Heavy Rain and all that stuff. And so like it a lot of times you would have more kind of a conflict of culture and egos that would kind of result in terrible products.
And anytime you have someone from Hollywood make that argument, Super Mario Brothers movie.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, that's the kind of that's the flip side. Is like they like for time they kind of made treated games like this kind of like weird
joke
offshoot a joke, and like they didn't make serious. I mean, even more recent, like there's the Doom movie where it's like like the whole thing was like they had this big thing about it's first person at the end. It's like that's just nauseating. Like
right. No, like I just watched another review of that because I love watching movie reviews. Just to hear what other people have to say about it. And the way that it was described by this one particular channel, I'm not gonna name them, was the most unfaithful movie that was too faithful. Because like for the majority of the movie, for the whole movie except for the 5 minutes of first person shooter, it has nothing to do with Doom. Like
right.
It absolutely just nonsensical. Right. And then you have this 5 minutes of just pure, oh, maybe that's a little too So it's like the most unfaithful, too faithful video game movie.
I can see that. I can definitely see that. Like, yeah, it's yeah. So, but I mean, again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Licensing is really kind of a tough thing, and like, I mean, even on a developer level, like licensing something is really tough because, you potentially you lose control. I mean, like everybody's ideal is to be able to kind of create their own IP, their own intellectual property. Kind of I think a good example of this would be Warcraft, where rumors are originally it was supposed to be a Warhammer, kind of a Warhammer homage.
Right.
Games Workshop wasn't interested in it. They kind of filed off the serial numbers, changed things around a bit, and voila, you have Warcraft. And it just so happens that Warcraft kind of resonated with people. It was a good game, and and people kind of appreciated it.
They just had to change the textures.
Right. Well, and so now you have Warcraft is huge for Blizzard, but for every Warcraft there's a ton of original intellectual properties that basically just go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so the flip side of that is you have companies like Telltale, or on the mobile game space, Kabam, where they would license products, but the problem is that it's like you don't really own then.
Right. And
know,
yeah, like
the Walking Dead games are Walking Dead games. They're not, they're Telltale had kind of their own brand of things, but ultimately, it's really hard
by...
right. But it's really hard for like another company to kind of step in and take over Telltale, because like what's the nature of the licensing agreements? A lot of times there is kind of a caveat, like this, the license can be transferable, but if they weren't, then that kind of really hurts Telltale trying to find a buyer, in order to have somebody else kind of come in and take what they're doing and make it more efficient.
Now that does bring up the question, do you think that like somebody else will be able to kind of fill the niche that Telltale's leaving in the market?
I mean, so it's really a question of why Telltale failed.
Right.
Is it, if it's because there's not enough, is it because they didn't generate enough revenue? I mean, if that's the case, then like, it's hard for someone to come in and create a whole new business that's going to be able to do what they did.
Right.
If Telltale couldn't generate enough income, then a newcomer is going to have that same problem. Unless the newcomer can do something that gets people excited by that type of game. I mean, what's more likely to happen, in my opinion, is basically, you're probably going to see, in the short term, the niche be filled by indies.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that an indie is not going to be able to go to AMC and license The Walking Dead and get as good of terms as the Telltale probably did.
No, then you just rename it to the Crawling Quickly.
Right, right.
Slightly Alive.
Right. The almost but not quite dead slow movers.
Right. Well, that's what I always say with like not to go on another tangent, but fan games.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sure you heard about Pokemon Uranium.
It
was
a little bit.
Pokemon fan game that had been, in development for like 9 years.
Right.
And it got DMCA'd within 2 hours of launching or being released.
Right. And Nintendo's pretty notorious about that. Nintendo is very on the ball about protecting their intellectual property. And to be fair, like if for intellectual property, you have to, like, especially trademarks, you have to guard your trademark.
Yeah.
If somebody can demonstrate that you have a trademark that you did not protect, you will lose that. And so, like, there's kind of infamous examples, like, Kleenex and Xerox, where the term became kind of a generic term for these things, and like, then all of a sudden, like, the companies, are threatened of losing control of their trademark if anybody can call their and trademarks are kind of important because that's how you kind of present your business, and that's how you distinguish your business. Telltale was a company that kind of provided a very specific type of game. If they Pokemon as well, like, if Nintendo can't control the Pokemon name and can't control what type of games are released with the Pokemon title, the Pokemon the brand name, then that really hurts their business.
Right.
And I mean, like, and like there are ways around that, like, the cease and desist and DMCA orders are one tool. A lot of times what some places will do is they'll basically they'll do license, like if you want to set up a Pokemon fan site, there's a lot of time, I don't know if Nintendo does this, but I know a lot of times certain other companies will have like fan kits. It's pretty big in MMOs. They'll have a fan kit, which basically comes with a little license saying you can use our name, but in a very restricted manner. You can't
Right.
make money off of it. That
14 has those fan kits that they release updates for like every patch or so.
Right. And but the problem, the further problem you run into though is that like when you start talking about fan games, I mean that's basically like like Nintendo is a business. It doesn't want competition. It's not going to empower competition. Like, and and it's, as much as like an homage, like as a developer, like hey, it's great. Somebody cares about what I created so much that they want to kind of like do their own thing. That on some level that's great. But to create a competitor and potentially take away money from me, that's a little less great.
Right. There's I actually, even though I tend to favor the consumer side of arguments because I tend to take that persistent, I actually agree with Nintendo in defending their IP when someone's making a literal ripoff. I mean, I appreciate how much work they put into it, but they should have been more responsible and made sure not to use the term Pokemon in it.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing is like like you can be inspired by a game. Like there's actually showing that like a genre of game cannot be copyrighted or trademarked or basically restricted. This is actually it's happened kind of in the past with a game called Fighter's History. Capcom, who did the original Street Fighter game, most people aren't that familiar with the original Street Fighter game because it became a lot more popular than Street Fighter 2. But the original Street Fighter game, like Capcom, if I remember correctly, Capcom basically got upset because Data East made this game called Fighter's History.
Right, I remember reading about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they were both Japanese games, and so basically, Capcom sued Data East, saying, "Well, look, they're basically just taking our game, putting new characters into it, giving slightly different game mechanics, but they're basically making a fighter game, which is just like our fighter game, and so they're kind of like ripping us off. The problem is that intellectual property does not protect an idea,
right? Just the expression.
It protects the expression of the idea, yeah, and so." Basically, so essentially Capcom lost, and Data East was able to continue, making Fighters Dynamite or Fighters History games.
I remember one of Capcom's arguments was that one of Data East's characters was a reskin of one of their characters, basically, but their like skill set was entirely identical. That was one of their arguments. But
right. But again, like you can't say,
right.
My idea is of a ninja fighter that throws shuriken.
It's so original.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, because if somebody could protect that, then like, right, you trademark or copyright or whatever. The most generic expression possible, and then go after everybody else. And so, but like if you create a ninja fighter named, Shinobi, who wears black and red outfit and has specific neutronium star throwing stars or whatever, and has the catchphrase in your face. The more kind of more specifics you can give, the more it's going to be protected, and so somebody else can't just rip off that. The idea is like you put a lot of effort into creating that character. It's not fair for somebody else to kind of like just piggyback off that work.
Yeah, that'd be
the
like.
Flip side is like
Go ahead.
But the flip side is like you can't claim the most generic thing possible to stifle other people's creativity.
That'd be like someone trying to like make a ripoff of like Overwatch and literally putting a reskin of like Tracer in it. Like,
right.
Blizzard would be all over that in like a heartbeat.
But like you could make the same generic, you can make it the same general genre of game. You can make an arena shooter. I mean, like, like Overwatch isn't the first arena shooter, so like,
Right.
I mean, Blizzard in particular is kind of known for taking ideas and then polishing them and basically, making executing very well.
Yeah, like Hi-Rez Studios actually got a little bit of flack for Paladins because everyone's saying, oh, they're just copying WoW, and Hi-Rez just like, no, we've actually been developing this game for 3 years longer than. Did I say WoW? I meant Overwatch. Oops.
Yeah, you said WoW, but Overwatch, yeah.
But then they revised it when they saw Overwatch and said, oh yeah, that actually works out better than what we were thinking about doing.
Right.
So, but the funny thing was that Overwatch had originally taken ideas from Paladins.
Right.
So then they ended up swapping on each other.
Right. And I mean, this is the kind of like, this is the nature of a lot of creative industries, though, where basically people get inspired, they see what other people are doing. I mean, like, this is like any creative industry like this, it's not just necessarily people cashing in, but a lot of times there's kind of a zeitgeist, kind of this feeling of like, oh, like, this type of game is kind of a logical, extension of this other type of game. Like, or they take MOBAs for example. It started as kind of a mod to
Warcraft 3.
Right. And and so then like people are like, oh hey, this is kind of fun, and like other I mean, this wasn't a super new original type of game. It's basically kind of it was literally taking the elements of Warcraft 3 and rearranging it to a certain way.
Yeah, to favor the hero play more than the unit play.
Right, exactly. And so you can't say like, oh, the MOBA was a completely new and original idea. Well, it wasn't. Did it do something new and interesting that became popular? Oh yeah, absolutely, certainly. But so then you had so then you basically had like League of Legends that kind of took off that kind of like, oh yeah, the MOBA thing's kind of interesting. Let's put our own spin on this. Let's do our own thing. And so like I'm gonna use that. Like even if you have like two MOBAs, like the idea that generally what you want to do is you kind of want to make them feel very different. You look at like League of Legends versus Dota.
They have two different sets of lanes, if I remember correctly.
Right.
One has that's 2 lanes, one has 3.
Right, and that's like, I mean, that's kind of the idea of what you want to do is you want your game to feel a little different, because if like this happened a lot with like MMOs. Like everybody wanted to make WoW, so everybody made a WoW clone, and guess what? Everybody was already playing WoW. Like you couldn't. It was going to be damn near impossible to create a game that was WoW that was going to get people to stop playing WoW and play your game instead.
Yeah, the mythological WoW killer.
Right.
The only WoW killer is WoW itself. Like.
Right. Well, I mean, but the idea is that you can make your own. The idea is you want to make your own game. It's like like Final Fantasy 14, which we both play. Is obviously very much, it's an MMO RPG, very much in a very similar style, but they both have different kind of feelings. Just looking at purely a lore level, where the lore of Final Fantasy 14 is very much like the rest of Final Fantasy.
And with every sequential update, like they blur the lines between 14 and every other Final Fantasy, to the point where, story-wise, we're getting to the point where we're acknowledging that the other Final Fantasy worlds exist.
Right. I mean, the Eureka, make direct mentions of the races of 11, even so.
and the Omega raids refer to Midgard, Somer, the dragons, and Omega coming from other stars, theoretically coming from the Final Fantasy VI world or 5, whichever it is.
Right. And so basically kind of tying things together. But but Warcraft is definitely kind of its own thing. It tends to be a lot more bombastic, a lot more kind of bigger than
comical
life. Right.
Like whenever they start talking about space travel and WoW, I just instinctively roll my eyes.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, here we go again. The goblins are making a rocket.
Right.
Ow.
Exodar and all that. Yeah. Oh. Here I am talking about stuff and you're dying.
I know. It's horrible. And then, hey, look, a natural segue. And then there's WildStar, which tried to put it onto 11.
Right. Yeah, I mean, WildStar, it was definitely kind of its own thing, but yeah. Then again, I don't really want to kind of armchair quarterback too hard about what they did or didn't do. People have their opinions about what WildStar could have done different or better or whatnot.
Pumpkin says, Space Goats!
Yeah, it's Exodar and the, I'm totally blanking on the name of the race. What is it?
The Draenei.
Draenei, yeah. Yeah, Space Goats, sure. But yeah, but talking about WildStar, is another example of a game where where a potential misstep can basically cause problems and cause a game to stumble and fall. And it kind of like ties a little bit back to a lot of like we talked about, like fan games. Like people talk about the players want to try to save the game. Which is nice. I mean, like I did that a little bit with the game I ran, Meridian 59. Like I worked on it at another company. Then I basically purchased the rights to it from 3DO and ran it on my own. The problem was that it was a one of the problems you run into is like I was sold the game as is basically.
Right.
The 3DO made it explicit, like, look, you cannot come back on us and sue us because you think something's missing or we withheld something.
Right. Which, I mean, makes sense from a legal stance.
From their point of view, yeah. Definitely from their point of view, they wanted to kind of indemnify themselves as much as possible. But, and it was a very specific case where they were willing to sell it to me and my business partner at the time because we were both former developers of the game. Like, in theory, we knew what we were getting into.
Right.
Like, we weren't going to be like, oh my god, this is an old game that, is kind of, creaky and, like...
How dare they sell us this old game?
Right, exactly. How dare they sell us this thing that doesn't, isn't, perfect, isn't ready to be an instant WoW killer, right?
So, just for anyone who doesn't know, because I actually had to do a little research on Meridian 59, because I mean we've talked about it a lot. You've told me all sorts of stories, but I never looked into it. So yesterday I looked at it on the Steam page, and it's an old game. It is very Doom-like, like original Doom-like. It actually reminds me a little bit of Daggerfall, just from the screenshots that I saw.
I mean, yeah. So it's basically what we kind of call a 2.5D game, where you have 3D environment, but like most of the characters and items in the world are basically 2D sprites that always face the camera.
Right.
And so the engine was basically kind of very heavily inspired by the original Doom engine. It was basically like one of the bits of paperwork I knew I saw at 3DO was essentially a technical paper describing the technology that kind of went into the Doom engine. And so basically the programmers wrote it from scratch. But they add, like, one of the things they added to it for example, sloped floors. Like, we could have sloped floors and ceilings in Meridian, whereas the original Doom engine wasn't able to have that.
Right.
Because the way the engine was written.
What year did Doom come out? I'm like blanking on the date. It was.
I want to say no. It was
Or was it later?
93, 94.
Okay, because I didn't get into PC gaming until the 2000s.
Right.
So I blank on the older PC games, unfortunately. I'm
sorry.
Right.
I'm trying to remember when I started playing it. Back in the day, back when dinosaurs ruled the earth.
So Meridian came out in '96.
Right. So it's basically contemporary. But I actually kind of like, been talking about business, backing up to Doom a moment, a little tangent here. Like, Doom was actually pretty interesting because it kind of was a little bit different. It basically it did things a little differently, where it was shareware. Like, there was shareware games before, but one of the things that really helped Doom kind of get some spread was that the internet was starting to get very popular. It was still mostly on campuses, but Doom kind of took advantage of the internet, and used it as a distribution medium before it really kind of became super widespread. Like, I think the date most people have for kind of widespread acceptance for internet is basically 96. And so, basically this is a little bit beforehand. Actually, like, if you when computers talk to each other, they basically use internet protocol that uses what's called a port on your system.
Right.
And ports have a number. The Doom game actually has an assigned port for the Doom for game communication.
Mm-hmm.
And that port is 666.
Nice.
And so basically, the Doom engine used, like, they actually got. I mean, like, it's not such a big deal these days, but the Doom hit at just the right time, where and that was another thing, that it was basically because it was a network game, like you could play it over a network, but Doom used the internet very well to kind of spread a lot faster and better than other games did of its time. Because basically, like, I remember playing it at university, and essentially we just go copy over files from another computer. It were probably originally downloaded from id's FTP site, and then, like, you could basically play the first episode for free, and then there was 2 other episodes if you bought into it. So,
Thank you for the follow, Rose M20. Welcome to the stream.
But yeah, so going back to Meridian then, so really interrupt you with my tangent. What was your question?
I don't remember.
Fine.
That's what I was asking about dates.
Yeah, so so Meridian was originally launched in very late 96, like December 96.
And it on its sale page. Maybe you can clarify this a little bit. But on the sale page, it claims to be the first MMO RPG.
Well, the first 3D.
Oh, yeah, that is correct. The first 3D.
I mean, like, this is one of the things where you kind of start splitting the hairs, it was because it basically used a 3D engine, even though, like I said, we call it kind of 2.5D because the architecture is 3D and the sprites are 2D. Mm-hmm. And basically, it still is a 3D engine. Like, the current version of the game, uses hardware acceleration for the architecture, and, like, the sprites are basically, like, just flat models essentially. Instead of being a 3D model, it's basically just a 2D model that basically has a sprite as the texture.
Right, and that's one of the tricks that they used to make Doom work, was that it was actually a 2D game spread into a 3D environment.
Well, the original Doom, like, it used a software renderer.
Right.
And so you had a.
You want to extract?
Sure.
I'm out of ammo. I've been out of ammo for a while.
Okay, yeah, we can hit the extraction. I'm doing fine, but
Mm.
I haven't gotten down 3 times, and I'm the one talking most of the time. So, but no, and so like there was games before Meridian. I think the best way Meridian was kind of described is it's very much a transition game between games that were primarily on. Do you want to try to survive for 2.5 more minutes for another thing, or you want to go?
We're about to run out of oxygen.
Okay, let's go then. Yeah, so basically you had and so it was basically considered a game that was very much it was considered the kind of the first 3D game, but it was what I was saying is a transition game between the older games that were on proprietary networks like AOL, Genie, and whatnot, and then the games that were kind of like open, on the open internet.
Ooh, I got a resource booster. Yeah, right. Internet. I was totally listening to what you just said.
At least, hopefully, your listeners are listening. So, and so it's kind of one of the. This kind of goes back to a lot of times, like we were talking about the game genres. Like a lot of times, it's not the first developer that kind of comes up with the genre that gets known for it. It's often like another game that comes along later
that refines it.
Right? Yeah. And so there's very much talking specifically about MMOs, since I know a lot of the history. There was basically a string of MMOs that were kind of considered the first real one, and the goalpost kept moving. Where when Ultima Online came out, well, Ultima Online's the first real MMO, kind of mass market popular MMO. And then EverQuest came out and swamped EVO, and then EverQuest is the first real MMO. And World of Warcraft came out bigger. Yeah, now it's WoW is the first real MMO, and it's like, no, especially as a developer, you kind of need to respect your roots and kind of understand the history.
The muds.
Right. I mean,
respect your muds.
Yeah, exactly. Like there was the muds that were a big thing before. Muds were kind of a big thing before were kind of a big thing before the graphical games even, yeah. And so I mean, I'm not saying that some text mod is more important than EverQuest in the history of MMOs. But I think it's important to kind of understand, I guess,
how it got there.
Right. Especially if you start looking at the commercial games, like what the development is, and trying to say, well, this is the first real MMO because it was bigger and more popular than the other ones, kind of ignores the fact that, well, later there might be another game that swamps that one, and then.
Star Wars Galaxies was the first MMO because that was the first one I played. Ha. Want to do another survival? I don't know.
Sure, give me a second.
They're kind of easy to just talk to. I think I'm bringing Nidus this time though, instead of Haro. I want to test out my Astilla build. Sorry, we're talking about the game instead of.
Yeah, we have to kind of like pause here in between. Actually, why don't you do one? Can you do one in Saturn or Series so we have a chance for or console drops?
I guess.
Did you get a resource drop booster, or did you get the resource doubling booster?
Resource doubling, unfortunately. I'd love to get a drop booster, but I don't have enough plat for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Meridian's place is kind of like in that history. I mean, it wasn't a big big. It wasn't as big a game. It didn't have. I mean, to be perfectly honest, the 3DO kind of did a terrible job of marketing it. And so it really kind of didn't take off as well as it should have. But
Yeah, when you were first telling me about it, I was a little surprised because I tend to look at myself as being, a kind of a big MMO player, and I'd never heard of Meridian before.
Right. I mean, that was kind of the problem we ran into when we ran it, was that like nobody knew about it except for like people who already kind of knew about it.
Right, which kind of defeats the point of that's not how marketing works.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, part of my motivation for the game was I never expected a huge game, but I wanted it to be a
As big as it could be.
Well, I wanted the players to kind of still enjoy it. Like, you know,
Right.
like when I ran it, when I helped, develop it at 3DO, I made friends with a lot of the players, and I really wanted the players to kind of like appreciate, get the chance to enjoy the game. Instead, because MMOs in particular still are kind of tricky beasts, because you have, because once the servers go offline, like, you can't really do much of the game anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the original Doom, like, obviously it isn't developing the original Doom anymore, but you can still go play it. Like, there's still files around. You can still go download it.
And it gets packaged with every Doom that gets re-released, like
Right,
comes out. Like
right.
it was put in with Doom 3. I know that. That's the first time I ever played Doom, was playing it off of Doom 3. And I know there's a way to play it on the new Doom that came out.
Right. And so, but even without it being kind of re-released, you can even talk about, like, even more obscure games. There's there's emulators, or even just like the original discs, DOSBox. You have the DOS emulator for like a lot of older games, so you can still play them.
We don't speak of emulators on this channel.
Oh, well, like, even as a developer, like, I appreciate emulators on a personal level, because, like, I didn't get to play every game when they were around. So.
Right. No, I love emulators. Like, I think they're fantastic things.
But like, it's one of those things, like, if the game is still offered for sale, I think it's better to go, purchase a legitimate copy.
Right.
I still have a lot of my old NES and Super Nintendo, and like all my old game consoles. And I'll still buy an occasional game. I was like, oh, hey, I'm kind of curious what this is. I've heard a lot of good things about this game. Head to eBay or whatnot and buy a copy of it.
Yeah, like the only game that I've ever streamed on emulator that I didn't own, that I'll admit that I didn't own, was Earthbound. Because it never had. No, it did have an American release, but it's super hard to get now. It had like a limited release on the SNES.
Yeah, I think it was.
And it's only was available for digital purchase on the Wii U, which I never owned.
Right.
So I was just like, there's no other way for me to get it. So. Because I don't have a Wii U, and I had no intention of getting a Wii U. Actually,
right.
Where's my Switch?
Time to see if it's on the online store there.
Let me look. I got my Switch right
here. As he just walks away from the keyboard as we're doing a survival.
No, I'm right here.
I'll carry you harder. Don't worry.
I'm a nidus. Like, let my maggots do their job. Oh wait, I might gonna have to log in.
But yeah, but MMOs are basically kind of a different beast, because there are emulators of older games, but that takes a lot of effort, usually to reverse engineer how the server worked and whatnot. And so it's a very, you know, it's when kind of a an MMO shuts down, you know, you kind of lose something until like we were kind of talking about before. You have the wild started shutting down, and it can be, you know, from a player point of view, it can be very kind of frustrating that you have this game you've really invested a lot into, you know, you really love, you know, have a community of friends there and whatnot,
and then it all just goes away.
right, because, you know, for whatever reason, you know, the company can't dedicate resources to it.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about this in our pre-planning, but Firefall is relevant to this as well. And we can talk about Firefall.
Right. Yeah, I know you played that quite a bit. I never did play it, but I'm vaguely familiar with it.
Yeah, I always forget what the developer's name. The guy that was from
Red
Blizzard.
5.
Whoa.
Mark Kern, was it?
Yeah, that sounds right. I remember Red 5. I just can never remember the individual's name.
Right.
Which I can't remember my password to get into my.
Our podcast host, ladies and gentlemen.
I know. I can't get into my Switch right now, or my eShop.
Right.
So like, he started it in working at Blizzard, and he left over creative differences, I want to say.
I don't remember.
There's a whole story about it. I don't remember off the top of my head. But
right.
So he left Blizzard, I think, on bad terms, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me. I could be wrong.
Right.
And formed Red 5 to follow out his dream of a WoW killer, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I remember correctly, like, Red 5 was around the time when, like, WoW was kind of like, you know, this surprise game that kind of seemingly came out of nowhere if you weren't paying attention. And so there were quite a few developers kind of involved with it. They kind of went out and essentially, made their, like, basically kind of like, you know, I washed the dishes in the cafeteria while they were making WoW. You know, give me a lot of money so I can make a WoW killer.
Right.
Obviously, I know the secret of, you know, what was going on. And there was a lot of money being thrown at people, you know, Blizzard people about, you know, games like this.
And I think it was 2011, 2012 that Firefall went into closed beta, because I got an invite to it, and it was around the same time that PlanetSide 2 was going into its beta, so I got invites for both of those. And I think that was 2011, 2012, and like it made some very, very, like, interesting, like, feature promises in the beta. Oh, the ever-changing world that, you know, the player participation changes over time. Woo.
Right. And this was a big thing that, like, a lot of people try to promise, you know, various degrees of success. People want to have kind of a very dynamic world, and, you know, that reacts to player input and whatnot. I mean, even like even as early as Ultima Online, like, you know, there's a lot of discussion about the early ecology of Ultima Online, where they wanted to have this, you know, kind of, you know, grand ecology, like, where, you know, rabbits had fur and meat, and it came from a pool. So, you know, if you and so you had, like, you know, wolves want to hunt rabbits. And, you know, and players also needed the meat and fur from rabbits to make certain things. But then, of course, like, the original designers kind of didn't anticipate hoarding for no apparent reason, and so players went and killed rabbits and basically just kind of started up meat and fur, and there's no way for them to essentially go bad. So because there was all the meat and fur is basically in tangible form, there's nothing to spawn new rabbits. So eventually, like the ecology kind of fell apart because there's no rabbits that spawn to feed the wolves, etc.
So no wolves would spawn. So yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, I think it was more like the wolves that there started attacking it became much more aggressive to players because they were hungry.
Right. Like.
But yeah, so yeah. So you have like so there's been the dreams of these kind of like ever-changing dynamic worlds that have been promised for a long time.
Yeah, I love the concept of them, but like when I start thinking about them from a logistic point of view, I'm just like, is it really worth it? Let's focus on some raids, like with
Right.
like how modern MMOs are. Like nobody's gonna like it would require so much logistical focus on that feature to make it worthwhile that I don't.
Well, I mean, like
think
in early MMO development, there was kind of this split between kind of the concept of world-like MMOs and game-like MMOs.
Right.
And the idea was that the game, basically, kind of game-like MMOs kind of won out a bit because they were, basically they kind of were less prone to kind of like degenerate conditions. Like the world ones where where Ultima Online could stop spawning rabbits because the players killed all the rabbits and were stockpiling the fur.
Right.
And so yeah, anyway, we kind of got off the topic of business, but so going back to, did you have a business question about Firefall, or because like we talked a little bit about like WildStar, like push players to kind of want to try to save it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone pushed to save for Firefall. Like the player base has really relied on it. We're really after it, and I honestly playing Firefall, I was optimistic for Firefall for a while. Like I was just like, oh no, they'll be able to this is just kind of a downslope. They'll be able to pull out of it if they just hunker down and ride it out.
Right.
Because like they were constantly like releasing new microtransaction stuff, like new vehicles, and like closer to the end of the game's life, they were doing a lot of revamps to the game systems, and they did a class revamp and like really fixed a lot of the classes and changed like a lot of the core systems to be more streamlined. And I thought that this was like them stepping in the right direction, but I think it ended up being too little too late overall.
Right. I mean, this is the problem you run into is that again, kind of talking about the downside of like running an MMO compared to a lot of other games is you kind of have to you have to make enough money to keep the lights on, keep the servers running, and so yeah, and so like if in the case of a game like Firefall where they needed the servers in order to keep the game, like that was kind of part of the point of the game was to run these servers. Yeah, they're going to be under more financial constraints. Kind of the same thing with going back to licensing as well. The licensee is going to have certain expectations about how much money they they expect your thing to make.
And I mean, if you want to look at the business side of things, maybe they shouldn't have spent $3 million on making a mobile game station van that they used once.
Right. It was cool before it fell apart.
Right.
Right.
Okay, that for anyone who's not familiar, the Red 5 spent $3 million to make it was a West Coast customs van.
Right.
That was like
basically a bus.
It was a bus, like an RV extendable bus that was like a mobile gaming center that they did for like a PR stunt. They spent $3 million on it, and used it for one like live gaming event, and then it broke, and sat in a garage for like 5 years.
Right, they didn't have the money to kind of continue to basically fix it up. Yeah.
So, was it a worthy investment, business-wise?
Well, I mean, again, like the problem is it can be very hard. Like, you know, again, hindsight's 2020. You know, you can see and kind of judge things. You know, in general, you want to be very conservative about your expenditures. You know, unless you have unless you have a good source of income coming in.
Right. Oh, Pumpkin puts it best. What is money?
What is money? Money is the basically agreed upon representation of value the people exchange for goods and services. It basically is a limited resource to represent the limited resources of time, capital, and materials.
Usually represented by gold, except for in America.
Well, I mean, like most countries actually use a fiat currency these days. That isn't backed by anything tangible. It's just a representation of the value of something. So, and I mean, like, you know, on a very simple level, you know, like the money you earn is basically like you do something to make money, and then that means you have created or, you know, done something of value or provided something of value. And then basically you can turn around and use that money to, you know, to purchase your own goods and services for something you value.
Pumpkin has a very important point to make.
$20 can buy many peanuts. Yes, that's true.
Yes. Most important lesson of the night.
Yeah, like don't ask me silly questions. I will give you a straight answer. Well, yeah, I mean, because like, you know, kind of, you know, a small tangent, like, you know, a lot of MMO design is, you know, basically is economic design, trying to make it so that money, you know, has some kind of worth. And so, you know, like a lot of times, you know, MMO designers will be very well versed in economics to understand economic design. But yeah, so but you know, then talking about WildStar, like, you know, like a lot of people, especially people who really enjoy the game, are probably feel very confused about why they're shutting down this game. You know, like they have a lot of fond memories of it. You know, like a lot of times people are like, oh, why can't they just sell it to a player? Why can't they just you know, like let the players take care of it if it's not worth making money? And the problem is that, you know, there's a lot of problems you run into. Like, you know, kind of what I said with Meridian is that, you know, we were sold the game as is, with the understanding that we were former developers and that we knew what we were getting into. So they could basically sell it as is. If we tried to sue 3DO later by saying, oh, yeah, they sold us
half a game,
an incomplete game, and go say, look, they were developers of this thing, they knew what they were getting into.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, but as, you know, like, for, you know, if you're just a random player off the street that doesn't have any kind of history with the game, you can basically, you know, it's going to be like, there's going to be at the very least a learning curve, like learning how to run the game, or developing on the game. Like, you know, even a game like Meridian 59 that was launched, well, in '96, like, you know, that's over 20 years ago now, is still, you know, it's relatively simple as far as like MMOs go, but it still takes a bit to, you know, to understand how to develop it, how to run it, how to, you know, administrate the servers. You know, some of this is kind of the crude nature of the tools, and some of it's just because it's still a very complex thing to run. And more modern MMOs, basically, you know, the tools have gotten better, but the complexity has increased significantly. Where, you know, Meridian could run on a single box with a single processor and still basically be able to handle a couple hundred people on a decently powerful machine. Well, modern MMOs basically the game is basically run on clusters of computers that network together.
Clusters of hamsters on wheels.
Well, that too. But yeah, and so like you have, like just administrating the thing is a lot tougher.
Yeah, like I mean, this is kind of a segue into the next thing we talking about was Star Wars Galaxies.
Right.
I played on some Star Wars Galaxies private servers, and at the infancy of those servers, which was not long after SWIG got shut down, like it was complicated to like get on the servers and to get things done on the servers because they were still writing the servers, like they were still debugging and trying to get the
Right.
coding right because they only had like a certain amount of the source code, so they had to recreate it by retrofitting effect, like figuring out, okay, we know this is supposed to happen in this area. How do we make it do that?
Right.
And
like a lot of times you might get the infrastructure and the framework, but you don't get the content, so you have to recreate the content. Yeah, and like going back to WildStar for a moment, like one of the problems you run into is that a game generally, like especially modern game development, is has a lot of pieces that are licensed or reused in places.
Yeah, you mentioned
So like
the trees.
right, oh yeah, like yeah. So basically, there's a product called SpeedTree that some people might be familiar with. It's basically it's basically a program that basically will develop trees that are able to be rendered fast, but that look fairly good and realistic. And it basically kind of saves the developers a lot of time trying to make trees and optimizing them.
Actually,
It
that
basically just
sounds familiar to Space Engineers. I think uses that.
a lot of games actually use it. The problem is though, is like these are basically licensed to a specific company for a specific purpose,
Right.
and the license may or may not be transferable. Is the problem. So if I don't know if WildStar uses SpeedTree, but they almost certainly license something. But so like if the license that NCSoft has for WildStar that isn't transferable, well, they could give the game to someone, but sorry, you can't use the tree. Like for example, you can't use the trees in the game because those are those need to be licensed from those are created need to be licensed from SpeedTree in order to use them in the game.
Sorry, our comical license of Thunder Fury, the Blessed Blade of the Windseeker is non-transferable.
Right.
You can't have it.
Right. But yeah, until like and again, like WildStar, like the server technology probably uses some stuff that NCSoft uses in other games, and like they don't want. I mean, they don't want to give essentially their competitors like information about how their servers work.
Right.
This is like a type of intellectual property called trade secret, where they literally need to keep it secret in order to protect it. If they just start giving it out to people, well, then it's no longer a secret, and then they're kind of handing competitors the ability to basically compete directly with them using their own technology.
Which nobody wants that for NCSoft.
Right. Well, NCSoft definitely doesn't want that.
Actually, I'm trying to think of what other games NCSoft runs.
I mean, they're pretty big. Like they did Lineage and Lineage 2 are the two of the other big ones they still run. And they ran a lot of games in the North American market. The big problem, of course, being that like a lot of the games don't perform quite as well as they would like.
Oh wait, isn't Blade and Soul NCSoft?
Yeah, it's published by NCSoft. So.
Okay, I was just like logging into my NCSoft account to see what games I had.
Right. Yeah, and so the developer publisher, I mean, that might be kind of an interesting thing to kind of talk about briefly. Is the developer publisher relationship is really
complicated.
I mean, it's not that complicated, but it's like it really is. It really is brutal for the developers, you know.
Yeah, the publisher always comes out on top.
Well, I mean, like, you know, that the argument being the publisher kind of takes a lot of the risk. Generally, the way a game goes is that a developer has an idea, but doesn't have a lot of money to do it. They go to a publisher. Publisher gives them the money to do it, but basically, will take some of the profits down the line. And they want to make profit. Not only do they want to make more money than they loan out, but they also want to make a profit on top of that, because compared to like if they just took the money and stuck it in the stock market or stuck it in bonds or whatever, they want to make sure that they're making enough money that it makes sense for them to do this instead of something else.
Right. Which in talking about developer publisher relationships, you can always talk about No Man's Sky.
Well, that gets into kind of the extra complicated thing of like what is indie. That's a discussion that can kind of go at the end of time.
Another talk for another stream.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah. So basically, like WildStar shutting down is potentially complicated because, like they can't, like they probably literally can't just hand over the game to somebody else because of all the licensing. And then when you get into Star Wars Galaxies, this gets even more complicated because then you have an intellectual property license on top of any of the other restrictive stuff they have to deal with. LucasArts was the one that gave the license for the Star Wars universe, and so Star Wars Galaxies, even if the developers wanted to, Star Wars Galaxies can't just hand over Star Wars Galaxies because it has a bunch of intellectual property that doesn't belong to Sunny Online Entertainment at the time.
Although I did read something interesting a few years. I mean, this is like almost 5 years ago, but at one point, Daybreak had updated their Star Wars license.
Right.
Which everyone that I knew, and I was playing the Old Republic at the time. I think that's why it was relevant. Like everyone just kind of looked at that and kind of like tilted their head slightly, like, what?
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, like it's entirely possible that they were looking to make a new new MMO, new Star Wars MMO or whatnot.
But then.
But I mean, like, wow.
But then EA had their exclusivity contract too.
Right. Well, I mean, this is the part of the problem is that a lot of games are planned but are never made. This is kind of the this is kind of the problem that you had with Kickstarter, where well, I mean, anybody who works, I mean, like I've worked on, I count real quick in my head, I want to say like 4 different games that never launched.
Right. I've bought about 4 different games that never went anywhere.
Right. I mean, and so yeah, it's like if anybody who knew the business of the games industry, which is kind of a very small group of us, kind of knew that like this is probably what was going to happen. Like this is why publishers basically kind of tend to be very much games are what's called a hit-driven business, which is kind of very the same for a lot of which is the same for a lot of entertainment industries, where you have a few hits, and those hits, basically the massive amount of money you make off those hits basically makes up for the amount of money you're going to lose on all the non-hits you make.
Right. I was actually reading an article about Nintendo's business strategy for their hits versus experiments ratio. And So like basically they always make sure to schedule their, you know, guaranteed hits like Super Smash Brothers or Mario Party is like one of their best selling games.
Right.
So they'll make sure to schedule a Mario Party game to come out uh around the same time that one of their experimental games will come out, like that they're not 100% sure about, like the Labo, for example.
Right.
So just to make sure that in case this game doesn't work, they still got to hit out that quarter.
They're still making income from that. Yeah, I mean, and this is one of the reasons why you get like basically so many sequels in games, because sequels have kind of a minimum level of performance you can kind of expect out of them.
Right.
You know, like Nintendo can publish a Mario Party game. You know, Mario Party is kind of a known quantity. People who like Mario Party are gonna buy the next Mario Party game because they want more of what they enjoyed before.
Because they enjoy hating their friends.
Well, I mean that too.
Mario Party. I mean that just going on another tangent. Nintendo, being the family-friendly, squeaky clean company, you know, the way that they market themselves, make the most ruined friendship games. Mario Kart, Super Smash Brothers, Mario Party, like these are the games that ruins people's lives.
But in a very fun way.
Right.
And you can always make new friends. It's fine.
And then lose them.
Get rid of those scrubs and find someone who can actually hang with you and isn't gonna
get on your level, bro.
Yeah, they can get on your level and not gonna whine every time you use the stupid blue shell because it's cheating. Dejara kind of said something. The best part of the Double Fine Kickstarter, they made videos of the process, and even the game never shipped. You could watch the crash.
Yeah.
Well, and and so, but yeah, Kickstarter, a lot of games just failed to ship, and that's kind of the life of a developer. Is like a lot of times you kind of have different groups of developers. You have some of the people like the people that worked on World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is a huge game, trend-setting. It did things people didn't think was possible to do. Get 1 million subscribers, that type of thing. And so the people who worked on World of Warcraft, will kind of have that prestige associated with them.
We're even the janitor thinks,
Right.
I cleaned the floors when they came up with this idea. I know exactly.
Right. Too bad we aren't a decade ago, and you couldn't get easy money from. You couldn't get easy money from a bunch of silly investors that thought they could throw enough money at developers.
That would be hilarious though if the janitor from Blizzard. We'll get into Mighty Number 9 soon, I promise.
Oh my god.
Don't worry, we'll get to it. Thank you for reminding me, Pumpkin.
Right. I mean, but you have a lot. You have a lot of other people in the games industry. You have a lot of people that kind of burn out of the games industry because, like I said, the game industry doesn't pay very well. The issue of crunch time is kind of notorious.
That's what they were saying about Telltale. The controversies that the working environment was hostile.
To developers, I mean, that's kind of common for every.
That's the controversy I was reading about with Telltale. Now that you reminded me.
Right. Basically long crunch hours and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, I can look it up again. I just have to.
Right. I mean, so crunch. I mean, crunch kind of touches on the business point of view. The problem is that and I've written on my blog about this a couple times. There's kind of good crunch and bad crunch. There's the good kind of crunch where you have people that are passionate about a project and passionate about a game, and they're like, you know what, this game is is so amazing. If I just come in and I work on it a little bit harder, it'll become so much better.
Right.
And so you have kind of that mindset of people who want to basically kind of do that, make the game better, so they come in on their own. But then you have bad crunch, where the project managers are like, well, we have this deadline, and obviously we didn't manage the project well enough to make this deadline, so therefore we're going to tell people they need to come in, sacrifice their personal lives in order to make the deadline that we set.
And if they don't, they're fired.
Well, I mean, if they don't, then the project doesn't get completed, and then then the company is in trouble, or the project gets canceled, and then that it kind of hangs over your professional life, or even if you stay at the same place. Oh, Bob worked on that other project that he worked on the failed project. He's cursed. He doesn't. He's part of a team that couldn't do what the rest of us did.
Ooh, they're not part of the cool kids club anymore.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the problems you run into. Is that there's a lot of social pressure about that. Like, back when I worked at 3DO, I worked on a game project that was like, it had an impossible deadline set.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we were given 6 months to do. It was supposed to be a port, but then the original game got delayed, but we still had 6 months to make a game. The level of the game is called Heroes of Might and Magic, which I don't admit to working on much, but it basically was a terrible game. Like, avoid it. But it was originally supposed to come on the PlayStation 1, and then we were supposed to make the PC port.
Okay.
But a little bit of exciting drama here. The original designer on the PlayStation port got arrested the third time for drunk driving and went to jail.
Oh my goodness.
Right, and so then they had no lead designer, but essentially because there was already a plans in place for us to ship
oxygen
the port. Oop. Popping it one. Maybe if I can.
This won't.
I got it. Well, I mean, you can pop one too. We're gonna need two. We should probably do two. Yeah, and so basically, then there's no original version. So we kind of starting with the graphics engine and some and whatever assets the artists have been working on without design guidance, we had to put together a game.
Right.
And and so it became like, oh, you've got to come in and do this game. It's like, but this is kind of bullshit because this is not what we signed up for. This wasn't the plan at all.
Because then you're basically designing the game off the cuff.
Right. And so the problem we ran into, of course, but the response I got from the guy who was my manager was like, well, but look at the other teams.
Oh my goodness.
And they talked, he basically talked about another game that 3DO worked on was called High Heat Baseball. Oops.
Oh wait, which Heroes of Might and Magic did you work on?
Heroes of Might, not Heroes of Might and Magic. Champions of Might and Magic. No. Oh, what was it?
Sorry, Pumpkin said Heroes. I
no. I might have said Heroes. I didn't mean Heroes. Heroes is actually a good game. I want to say it was. No, I don't. It's not Champ. God damn it! I don't remember it. I'll look it up here in a second when I'm not dying.
It was so traumatizing to you that.
I'm trying to block it out. Yes. Thanks for opening the wounds, Pumpkin.
Jeez, Pumpkin.
Yeah, I'm gonna go cry in a fetal position in the shower now.
Oh my goodness.
It was a truly terrible experience. Oops, we probably need to extract here soon.
Okay. 2 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, let's head toward extraction then, basically.
Just camp it.
Yeah, just camp it for the 2 minutes. 1 minute here soon. But yeah, so so basically when I kind of talk, one of the things that happened to me was that I wanted my birthday off. We were supposed to ship. My birthday is November 1st. We were supposed to ship near the end of October.
That should keep you going for a while.
But we got delayed, and we got a couple extra weeks to work on the game. Ooh, exciting. And so they were like, "No, we can't give you your birthday off."
Oh.
And and so like the guy who was my manager at the time kind of guilted me about it, saying, well, the High Heat team, like everybody chipped in to get a couch so they could sleep at the office and complete the game.
That's
right.
not
I mean, like,
something to brag about.
But the thing is, though, is that, like, this is kind of the mentality of the games industry. Is that, like, you know, it's a badge of honor, especially when you start considering that a lot of times, you know, like I said, programmers can go somewhere else and make a lot more money.
Right.
And so, like, you know, like if they, you know, so basically they're kind of looking for badges of honor. They're looking for badges of honor that basically like would let them kind of demonstrate, look, I'm cooler than other people who go working for Facebook or Google, which weren't things at the time, but yeah, but that's
MySpace.
my point is that, yeah, oh my God, nobody wanted to brag about that. But like, you know, but you know, showing you're kind of tough, that you were like this tough macho person that was willing to kind of sacrifice to the team, even though you weren't going to get paid anymore. Like, I didn't get paid anymore. I literally, after I went to a job, after I left my job at 3DO and went to work at a .com company, like, I literally was making twice as much money.
Right.
Because, like, you know, like, I didn't get any bonus out of, you know, the shipping that game because it was a terrible game. It didn't sell well.
Well, now you gotta tell us what game it is so that we can all check it out.
Oh my God! Okay, I'll look up the.
See if we can get a copy of it to stream. See, every game that you say that you worked on, I want to play on stream at some point. Like good, bad, the ugly. I want to see it all. Just so that we can get some insight, like commentary on it.
Yeah, it was basically the game was basically an over-the-shoulder, more action type of Might and Magic game. It was based in the Might and Magic universe. It wasn't one of the RPGs, and it wasn't the strategy games, Heroes of Might and Magic.
This is actually a really good funnel room.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm actually exploiting Mob AI at the moment.
Crusaders of Might and Magic, that's the name of it.
Is it available on iOS and?
Probably not. It's probably one of those games that they really kind of like, you know, like nobody's gonna admit, nobody's gonna want to play it.
I want to play it.
The story that I talk about this, you know, as working on that is it's a terrible game. But the two things I work on was the sound and the map. Like I didn't work on the sound system. I actually worked on placing the sounds, which was was a quasi designer job. And like so like at the time, you know, like game reviewers kind of like had, you know, the way a lot of times game reviews work is they have to kind of pick one good thing and one bad thing about the game. Like, you know, or no matter how bad the game is, they have to pick one good thing to talk about.
Right.
No matter, and a lot of times, like, you know, a good game always has like one slight, you know, thing that basically gets kind of like pointed out, like, oh, the you know, the animation of the obscure monster is not quite up to speed, like, you know, that type of thing. But
they have to have something to nitpick.
Right. But despite being kind of a terrible game, like the two things that people talked about it being good was the sound and the map.
Nice.
So I'm like, okay, like I did my job.
That's when you just walk in the room and you're like, you're welcome.
Right. The other humorous story I have to tell about this is actually pretty funny. Kind of going back to the licensing thing.
Okay.
Oxygen, can you get to one, or should we extract?
Give me a sec. I just got a whole bunch of drops here.
All right. Okay. So they basically were contracted out music for the contracted music for the they contract out the songs, and so they want kind of a more kind of rock and roll type of cool music. Let's extract. Get going.
Oh yeah, I was just waiting till 15. We're good.
There you go. Yeah, and so basically they wanted to have this kind of rock, and so they basically the game came out about the time of the Matrix soundtrack.
Oh no.
Which had the Marilyn Manson song "Rock Is Dead." And so what happened? And so like the funny part was like I knew one of the managers on the team. He basically was the manager of Meridian, and basically when I came over, he came over with. We kind of got merged into the team after they closed down Meridian, after they closed down Meridian 59, and so he had loaned me the Matrix soundtrack on CD.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he comes along and says, "Oh, here's the music from the thing." And I thought he's a bit of a practical joker. I thought he was a practical joker because if you listen to the music, it was all essentially synth versions of "Rock Is Dead." And so I'm like going to him. I'm like, "Oh, that's like kind of funny." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "You didn't hear it?" He's like, "What?" And so I went over to my desk. I put the CD in the CD tray, started up the CD player, and then and then started a media player separate and played both at the same time. And like you just see the look on his face, like no, until he had to face the reality of like yes. They're basically trying to kind of pass off this shoddy work, and of course I came back and said, "Oh, sorry, that was a subcontractor. I guess." I'm like, okay, whatever. But like, I like it, so basically that was my "you're welcome" thing. I prevented them from including those songs into the game and getting sued by Marilyn Manson's music publisher for basically copyright infringement.
Wow, I can't even get a hold of Crusaders.
Yeah, it was a terrible game.
I'm trying hard.
Yeah, it was just one of those things that
like I'm using like every shady site I know.
Yeah, it was just terrible.
Oh, you can get it on GOG.
Oh yeah, well, okay.
$5. Hey, you want to give me $6 to buy it?
Good. Look, I like you. I'm not going to torture you like that. if you're going to be that masochistic, you have to pay for it yourself.
Hey, anyone want to give me $6 on stream?
Do you hate him that badly?
I'm sorry. I don't usually ask for money. I'm not seriously asking for money. Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyways. Whew.
Yeah, until so it became one of those things that like the game industry just it's kind of terrible. And so I mean, like the rise of indies is kind of interesting recently because I mean I shouldn't say recently, like the indies have been around for quite a while now, but like the rise of indies was really kind of took place because a lot of the business practices were so terrible, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. I want to say there were a bunch of Nintendo games for the N64 that originated from independent developers. And then Nintendo got like tech demos from them and they're like, okay, we'll make it. I think Star Fox 2, even though that never... No, it did officially release. It was just not in America.
Right, and I mean, like, again, this kind of trades into the potential of the what is indie. Like, like it on a purely technical level, if you're working with a Nintendo, you're no longer indie.
Right.
It's basically like independent, independent kind of from the Hollywood version of independent movie maker. Basically means you're not working with a major studio, which it generally means you're not going to get the distribution.
Right, and I'm not going into film history. Not right now. That's a totally different channel. Well, yeah, like, well, there was a controversy about like the Star Fox 2 example in particular because they showed a tech demo for what would be Star Fox 2, and Nintendo was like, that's neat, but we're not going to go with it. And then Nintendo went and used what they saw in the tech demo and just recreated themselves. Or that's what the story is.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm talking about like the kind of the rise of kind of the truly independent developers. Steam kind of really helped facilitate that as well, where Steam basically became a publisher in essence, and kind of allow, because a lot of what, so the two things that publishers did was basically funded games
and marketed.
And then they did marketing and more importantly distribution. And this was important back when we had physical boxes for games, where like when you went to Target or whatever in order to pick up a game and and take it home to play it, like it took like somebody had to make the game, print the boxes, put it together, ship the boxes from wherever they were made or wherever they were put together to a store to be sold to you. And the publishers kind of like publishers like EA had control over these distribution networks, and they had the clout to basically be able to go to Target and say, look, we have these 5 games, we think they're going to sell through these numbers. This is how much we're going to charge you, and then we expect there to be this much markup, and so this is the value of the game. And so you had to, before kind of the rise of Steam and a lot of the digital distribution platforms, like, if you wanted to make a game, you had to do that. And the publishers kind of had, it was a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, because the publishers, like, the game needed to be such a certain minimum size in order for them to make it worth their while to have to use a distribution network. Which meant that basically, like, they really couldn't take very small games. They wanted to fund games up to a certain minimum value in order to kind of make it worthwhile, so they would think that it would sell enough copies.
Right. Grand Theft Auto's a story about that. Nintendo, like, Grand Theft Auto originated as a Nintendo project, or a what would become Rockstar. I forget what they were originally called. We're working on an open world game as a secondary developer. And Nintendo saw what they had and they're just like, nah, pass.
Right.
Which almost devastated their company because they were relying on Nintendo.
Right.
But then they kind of, it was originally supposed to be Cops and Robbers, where like you could either play as a cop who was trying to enforce the law, or you could play as a robber who broke the law. But nobody liked playing cops because who wants to drive properly down the road? Like, that's boring. So like eventually they just dropped the cops part and then turned it into Grand Theft Auto. And but like they saw the potential in themselves and they're like, we don't need Nintendo for this. This is gonna be big all on its own. And now look at like GTA 5, which makes like $1 billion a year.
Right.
Or whatever.
Well, I mean, right, and that's kind of like that's the hit based nature of the games industry. It's like, yeah, you have a lot of games, like you have a lot of games that basically kind of flounder and die in obscurity, and then you have a few things that are become huge And like a lot of times companies that have like large successes can basically kind of use that to be to publish other games that become large successes. Probably a good example of that is like Bungie kind of had that big breakthrough with Halo because Halo did so well. Now they're able to do
Destiny, yeah.
And so but like without a company that didn't have Halo to kind of like to do well for it, at first, it would be hard for someone to kind of like just get a team together and make Destiny from scratch without any money or whatnot. And that's kind of part of the problem with MMOs for a long time. I mean, MMOs are now kind of very much out of favor because there's not seen as having much growth anymore, and that's kind of one of the big things you want to look at for investment is like how much growth are you going to see? Can they do something big and exciting? So there's always kind of like the hip new thing that becomes the focus, the darling. Like after MMOs, then it was social network games, and then after social network games kind of peaked, then it became mobile games, and now you see like a lot of people trying to kind of flounder around for what's next, looking at potentially VR games. But VR is kind of like lost a bit of its luster. There's still kind of like a lot of you still have kind of a lot of interest there.
Yeah, like I thought like it was interesting like when people started really playing around with the VR stuff, but the threshold to get into VR is so high that I don't think like it's going to be a very long time before VR gaming becomes a mainstream gaming experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the adoption of the hardware has not taken off as much as anybody had really hoped.
Right.
Like Oculus got a lot of people very excited about VR, but like and more recently, a more recent example of this is Magic Lens, where they have kind of this they wanted to do something a little bit more what's a good way to put it, at least a more augmented reality with glasses and whatnot. But the flip side though is that there's a lot of questions about the viability of that technology.
I didn't
but like
Magic Lens.
Yeah, it's basically kind of it was kind of a darling for a while, but like eventually they kind of like like people started kind of having questions about if the technology is even feasible the way they describe it.
Right.
And so the other, but I mean, but a lot of people kind of like start chasing trends. Another big one was a trend that basically kind of went nowhere was 3D TVs.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically kind of the 3D TVs were kind of a big thing, and so like a lot of games started to do that. Like even the 3DS, the Nintendo 3DS, like part of it was like this kind of like stereoscopic 3D effect that they could do right in the console.
I have a 3DS right here. I love it.
Yeah.
Nintendo actually lost money on the 3DS though because they got sued.
Yeah.
That's why they stopped making it.
Yeah. I mean, this is part of the problem. Yeah, you have the you have patents and other intellectual property that you can run afoul of. Yeah, but then they make the Switch and everybody's happy. So, but yeah, so like.
When they're being sued over the Switch too, that's the fun part.
Wow, I mean, like
everything Nintendo makes, they're getting sued over.
Well, I mean, I mean, this is the nature of patents these days. I mean, there's this concept of patent trolls,
right?
Where a company will buy up a bunch of patents and then see if they can kind of enforce them, and or even like other companies like Apple might hold a patent on something. And they see Nintendo doing something like, well, if people are playing their Switch, they're not playing on their iPhone, so. There will be, they can potentially they'll use patents offensively like that. There's also defensive patents where, if, Nintendo has a lot of patents, so like if Apple sues them, they can go, they basically have a bunch of patents where they can go, oh yeah, well you're violating all these patents. And this, of course, the end result, of course, is like if you're a small developer who wants to make hardware, pretty much give up because you have all these patents already in the field. you're not going to be able to compete with.
Right. It's a very, very cutthroat environment for patent enforcement and law and trying to get new patents.
My friend Greg Boyd, who helped write the book on business and legal issues, basically one of the things he'd like to say is like, defending a patent suit, even if it's an open and shut case of obviously nothing could possibly be infringing here, is a minimum of $1 million.
Right.
Bigger time, part time, like just gathering up the information. You're looking at $1 million in legal fees.
Yeah, I think Nintendo lost like $200 million on the Nintendo 3DS lawsuit. I can look it up. Please don't yell at me for ad block. Okay, thank you. 30 million.
Okay.
They lost 30 million, and it was to an individual. I think it was like a former Sony employee who had the patent to glasses-free 3D. And like, it's just like so weird that they would hold the patent, but like Sony wasn't messing with it at all. So it was like very obvious a patent troll, but
yeah, I mean, like, this is generally like I said, a lot of times companies will have like defensive patents or something like that.
And the Switch one.
Yeah, and then so basically like a lot of times like larger companies will kind of like encourage people to kind of come up with patents and file for patents, even if they don't do it, even if the company doesn't do anything with it, because you can have defensive patents or even offensive patents like that to basically hurt a competitor.
It's Game Vice is the company that tried to sue Nintendo for Snap-on controllers for mobile devices. Which is like what the Joy-Cons are.
Right.
But I don't think that suit went anywhere because the argument was that their Snap-on devices were specifically for universal mobile devices like phones and tablets, while Nintendo's is very specifically for the Switch.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the nature of patents. Like, I've actually worked on as a legal expert on some patent cases, mostly software patents. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what happens is like you have to kind of like, if you have a patent, you kind of want to make it as broad as possible, even though it's supposed to be a very specific thing. If you're defending it, so you kind of want to try to say, okay, they have that patent, but it doesn't apply to us because. And one of the ways you can do it is with what's called prior art, which a lot of people are probably familiar with, where it's like, no, actually somebody did that before you, so you don't really get that. You really don't hold that full patent.
I invented this wheel. That means I filed the patent for my wheel. Okay, well,
Right.
There's wheels before this one. What makes this one special?
Right. And that's kind of part of the trick you want to do is you want to try to figure out some way to make it yours a little different, a little stand out a little bit
more. That actually reminds me of an episode of The King of Queens. I'm not sure if you know this sitcom.
I'm familiar with it, but I don't watch it a whole lot.
Kevin James and whatever her name is. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Right.
I used to watch it when I was a kid, but there's just one episode. It was so stupid that it just stands out to me, where Arthur, the Kevin James father-in-law, he finds out that the writer of Charlie Brown, I forget what the Arthur's name is.
Charles Schultz.
Yeah, Charles Schultz. That's it. Like he went to school with Charles Schultz, and like he was reading a comic strip and he's just like, that's us. I was in the Peanut Gang. Like, I'm going to sue him for, and I was Charlie. I'm going to sue him for everything he's got. Because, like, he wore, like, the
iconic shirt with the
yeah, the orange shirt with the squiggly line and blah, blah, blah. And then they kind of point out to him, wait a second. And he shows, like, a picture of them. And he's just like, wait a second. Is that your school uniform? Didn't all of you wear that? Like, it was so funny. But he's just like, I'm going to sue him for everything he's got. It was just so funny. Like, that's one of the few episodes where I was like, that's actually slightly clever. Don't get me on sitcoms. I hate them.
But yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of kind of misconceptions about how intellectual property works, and stuff like that. So, I mean, and that's kind of why I helped write that book about business legal issues. But like I said, I ran my own small company for a while, and I've worked for startups. So like having kind of understanding of the fundamentals of business has been very important to, even as somebody who's kind of much more on the creative side than on the business side. Understanding the nature of development, how business works has been important. So.
Right. It's good to be well-rounded for anything that you're doing,
Right.
I mean, everyone talks about like specialization, but that's boy, I'm going into a kind of a philosophical thought process. Because like the Western work ethic or culture is always specialization. You educate yourself to specialize into a role. But then like you think about like Eastern culture, they kind of keep the job education broad so that if someone is unavailable to do their job, you can almost pick anyone else in the company to fill in for them.
Right, and it's I mean, but the thing is like if you specifically talk about if you specifically look about creative positions like there's almost endless examples about how creative types essentially get taken advantage of. Because they don't understand some detailed business like contracts or licensing or whatever, or I mean you obviously kind of have the flip side of that where you have like George Lucas kind of infamously retained the rights to merchandising,
which is so genius.
Well, I mean like he exploited it well, but now if you're a filmmaker in his position, you're not going to get merchandising.
Right.
Everybody understands what the value of merchandising is. You're not getting merchandising. The movie houses are not going to the movie studios are not going to let you retain those rights because they're too profitable for them.
Right, and like the thing that amazed me was that he was able to keep those royalty rights even after he sold to Disney. From what I was reading about, yeah, like just I need to look up like how he did that, but yeah, he's able to retain them even after he sold to Disney.
I mean, as long as Disney was able to use most of Star Wars. I mean, it's probably a very kind of small amount of money compared to.
I think he retains like 3% of all merchandise sales.
Right.
Which I mean is a huge amount. Like.
Right. I mean, good for him. But yeah, again, that's a very special situation. Oh yeah, this is kind of like the one of the frustrating aspects of creative work is that it's really easy to kind of lose control of your property, of your creation, and really hard for you to kind of make it big, unless it becomes huge. I mean, you still have examples like J.K. Rowling or in the games industry like Richard Garriott. You still have people that kind of that can make it big, but I mean, even look at Richard Garriott, like the number of people that have been able to recreate his success, even though the games industry is a much bigger place now, with with a lot more money being spent on it, as an entertainment industry, like you don't see anybody becoming kind of like the quite so fabulously wealthy. Ooh, like got a couple of Orkin cell holders. There's actually 2 of them over there.
I gotcha.
But but even somebody like J.K. Rowling, like thing is super rare. Like somebody writing books, and even if they're pretty popular, a lot of times writers will the people that can kind of quit and do writing full time is pretty small.
Mm.
And the people that kind of make become fabulously wealthy off of it is minute. And it's kind of the same thing in the games industry, where it's really hard for you to be able to kind of get to the point where you can create something like the Ultima series, and then basically become very very well off from it.
Yeah, and like we were talking about like everyone jumps on like the bandwagon after the success. Like everyone wants to make the next WoW, for example. Well, that that doesn't exist only in the game industry, but the book industry, like
right. After Harry Potter, like everybody wanted to write the next young adult big hit.
Oh my goodness! And like every single one of them, whether they deserved it or not, became a movie.
Right.
There's the Divergence, then there was the Hunger Games, and then there was the Maze Runner, and
Right.
Oh my goodness, there's 50 Shades of Grey. Oh wait.
I don't think that was a young adult.
I thought it was supposed to be like a dark comedy. Because it sure as hell was a joke.
But yeah, you like every creative industry kind of has this thing where they try and chase trends. And the game industry is the same way. The clones and sequels that everybody loves to hate on. They exist for a reason, because that's what people buy. And so you kind of have the same thing. Everybody sees the success of Harry Potter, then they want to get they want to have a piece of the next thing that basically kind of will take that place. Will basically kind of can capitalize on that kind of hunger people have for that type of that genre. Or like you said, movies, science fiction becomes popular, and all of a sudden it's everybody needs to make a science fiction movie.
Back to the Future is popular, so everyone needs to do time travel.
Right. Always a good idea.
Which just throwing it out there. Watch 12 Monkeys. Good time travel movie. Watch it.
Right. And so like I said, you kind of run into sometimes you run into issues where the kind of the business side of things kind of screw you, and if you're able to kind of have some insight, or strike a lucky, Lucas did with retaining merchandising rights, and then suddenly merchandising becomes a huge profit thing for but yeah, so so understanding the business side of things can kind of help you kind of I mean, it's by no means doesn't guarantee you success, but it kind of help
gives you more foundation
power. Yeah, right, it gives you more power when you're kind of dealing with the business development people that do this for a living, who do contract negotiation for a living, and know exactly what they want to get out of you.
Yeah, kind of like kind of example of missed opportunities, I guess, would be the writer of the Witcher series.
Right. Who basically was notorious for like not really appreciating video games, and so yeah, he licensed away the Witcher series for like not very much money, and then basically got kind of salty about it later. It's like,
Right.
well, when it became kind of a pretty massive success.
Which, if I remember hearing correctly, like the Project CD Red, was that the name of the company?
Yeah.
They were like, you want royalties, right? Like, you want royalties, and he's,
right.
No.
Because basically, he had no faith in the game actually doing well, and so he thought he was just going to get cash up front, and then laugh as these idiots were waste their time making a game.
And it ends up being like one of the more popular series of its time.
Right. No, I mean, the Witcher games are really good.
Yeah, I actually intend on playing the Witcher games on this channel. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I have all 3 of them. I played the second one for a little bit, but I need to actually sit down and play it again. I want to start with the first one and actually play through all of them, though.
Yeah. The first one is, from what I heard, the first one is like, I liked it. I played it. I liked it. I think it's a really good game that kind of like establishes the universe and establishes the setting very well.
Yeah, I started with the second one and I was all sorts of confused.
Right. Well, the main complaint I heard about the first one is like the combat isn't very intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's really because it's based on kind of combos and like hitting basically hitting things at a rhythm.
Right. Yeah, I was planning on like just playing it on like the easiest difficulty.
Right.
So I could like cheese through it the best I can. Cause I mostly wanted just for context of the later games. And because the games have a continuous save.
Right.
Now that actually is an interesting thing for games to have continuous saves throughout sequels.
Mm-hmm.
Like for like Choices Matters games. And overall,
well, it's pretty interesting because like that was actually pretty common way back in the day for RPGs, where you'd work up characters in one game, and often you'd be able to kind of like copy characters over for other.
Oh really?
Yeah, like the original Wizardry games were big about that, where you basically could play Wizardry 1, and then you could basically take the characters and play Wizardry 2, or you can make new characters.
Okay.
And so that was kind of taken out. Like that concept was kind of picked up later by games like Mass Effect, like you said, where it wasn't just, and like the original concept was about kind of being able to basically kind of having a continuity of the characters playing the characters. Then it became kind of like basically saving some element of the game world, where in the Mass Effect, like you made decisions in one game that kind of influenced
the Choices Matters
right
element.
Right.
Which, I mean, I love the concept of it, but it's so hard to execute in a satisfying way, as we saw with Mass Effect 3.
Right.
Like, if you're just a little bit off with your, calculations for how people will respond to it, then it throws away, several years of storytelling.
Right. Where you're trying to have this kind of a grand conclusion to, where you feel it's an epic story, but then suddenly people kind of have the perception that they're the choices they made through 3 different games suddenly don't matter at the end, and it's like, well, oops.
Right. Which, like, I understand they had a lot of production hell for that, and I've never played a Mass Effect game, mind you. I can't speak from personal experience with those games. One day, but like, and like, I always have an issue with visual media for like grand and epic worlds. Like, one of the things I loved when I played World of Warcraft was reading the books. And the books would be so, you know, visceral, and I mean, depending on the author of the book you're reading, but I loved the Well of Eternity series for Warcraft, which was a trilogy, but it also had a prologue book and an epilogue book as well. So like it started with Day of the Dragon, then you go through the Well of Eternity series, and then it would end with Night of the Dragon. And I loved the world building that those books would do. But then when you actually, you know, got to go to the places that the books would talk about, you go, oh, is that what it actually looks like? Oh, that's not.
Right, is that it? Yeah. Well, yeah, well, it's very interesting because, like, you know, sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the sake of a game.
Right.
Like, you know, like a lot of times the cities in a game are much smaller than what a real city might actually look like. But, you know, like, because a lot of cities kind of just, you know, a lot of times cities are just kind of, you know, are full of empty spaces that don't have a whole lot of, like, you know, essentially wouldn't have gameplay meaning.
It'd just be a waste of resources.
Right. I think one of the most interesting things you can do, like, if you play Final Fantasy XIV currently, like, watch the Stormblood cutscene of Kugane, then go to Kugane.
Right.
And notice, like, how very, very different they are.
You get, like,
where the cutscene of Kugane,
of
right? The cutscene of Kugane is like huge. The actual Kugane is tiny, you know, comparatively. Like, I mean, like the, you know, I think like it shows like there being like 3 bridges across the kind of the main river in the city, whereas in the game, like, there's only 1.
Right, exactly. And like according to the developers, like, we only have access to like 1/3 of Ura.
Right.
And like they've teased about possibly making more of the city in the future. And to anyone who doesn't play Final Fantasy XIV, I apologize, but we refer to Final Fantasy XIV a lot.
Right.
And if you don't play it, you should at least try it, because it's actually a fun game.
Yeah, it's got a free trial, so which is it's unlimited time wise, but you can you're limited in what you can do, and you can, you know, to avoid, you know, some gold spamming, and it also and you're limited, I think, to like level 30 or something like that.
35.
So. Yeah, I mean, so you can get a pretty good taste of the game.
You get about.
Where you actually have to spend money.
You can play about halfway through the base story, which isn't bad.
Right.
Yeah, they very explicitly stop it just before the big story reveal. About Marcus. We'll go with that. Well, actually, that is another. I mean, that's somewhat business related. RMTs. Dealing with RMTs and MMOs.
Right. It's tough because, I mean, like, you know, there's people who want, you know, to basically, you know, take the shortcut, and like, you know, like in World of Warcraft, back when I played it way back in the day, I had a friend of mine who was in my guild who basically bought money in order to buy a mount. This is back when, you know, like, it was very expensive.
Right. 400 gold for.
Right, which is like was, yeah, you saved up for a long time for that thing. And basically his justification, you know, basically, yeah, his perspective was he played a paladin, and the quest to get your mount as a paladin was like just super brutal.
Yep. It was.
Back in the day. Yeah. And so he was like, well, I'm not going to be able to do my quest because I don't have, like a bunch of big, super high powered friends to help me out.
Yeah, you had to farm like lower Blackrock Spire, if I remember correctly.
I think Skullomance, but yeah.
Oh yeah, it was Skullomance, you're right.
I think and then there was also the Warlock one too, which, but anyway, yeah, like back in the day, but yeah, but so he bought gold and then he bought a mount because he was like, well, the game kind of shuts me out, and he felt like the game was shutting him out of like being able to kind of earn his class mount because he didn't have the right type of friends to do the content, and so he did that. And I had a friend in Final Fantasy who did the same thing, where she just kind of like was like, oh, I just want to buy money. I don't want to have to like, go farm stuff. I want to get cosmetics or whatnot. And so it was like, and so it became one of those things where it really, it becomes hard because like there is a market for that. There's people that want that, and like it's been very interesting because like a lot of the companies will try to kind of like do things to
counteract
that. Like the big thing is like Eve with their Plex, where you can basically purchase subscriptions with an in-game item
and WoW's moved towards that too.
Yeah, WoW did the same thing, yeah, with the Cronus token or whatever.
It's WoW tokens.
Oh, yeah.
Or Warcraft tokens, I think. I don't remember.
Right. But yeah, so basically, by giving people kind of a way to earn the money in the game, have where they can buy something from the developer. I mean, the big problem is it's like a lot of people kind of think about like the problem of RMT as being like, oh, it's people cheating and not earning stuff. Like obviously, like game developers don't have a problem with that as long as they're making the money. The bigger problem is that kind of the consequence of this is that like it causes a lot of customer service issues. If the RMT bot rips you off, you pay your money, you don't get your in-game gold. Well, going and complaining to the RMT companies not to do it, you're going to complain to Blizzard, or if, the other big problem you run into is like how do the RMT groups get their cash? One of the ways they do it is essentially by hacking accounts. I mean, like I had my World of Warcraft account hacked, and basically that's what they did. Is they just stripped my account, sold everything they could for gold, transferred away the gold, and then basically used that to pay someone who bought it.
Right.
Because that's like that's going to be a lot cheaper and easier than going and farming. The other problem I run into is it was where was it? Down in Stranglethorn. There were these goblins that basically dropped the broken lanterns that sold for an amazing amount of money relatively. And the RMT bots kind of figured this out, so they went and basically killed these continuously. The problem is though is that the goblins you need to kill were needed for a quest.
Right. And
so you basically like it was a very frustrating quest to try to do because you went and we're gonna kill those goblins. No, there's already a swarm of RMT bots that even if they weren't automated, basically didn't speak English. So you couldn't say, hey, like back off, let me do this. Let me get my thing, and then you can go on your merry way. They were basically kind of really, and they really kind of soured the experience. In some ways, I mean, like for me, I kind of found it kind of amusing because I was able to kind of challenge myself a bit. Like, I played a druid back in vanilla, and so like the cat form had track humanoid, so I would try. I'd be in cat, right? Yeah, I'd be in cat form tracking humanoid, I'd see one spawn, pop up. I'd give my friend who was a mage to go over there. He would frost nova it, and then basically we'd be able to kill it because base tag and kill it a little faster. I mean, we didn't, we weren't able to kind of gain every one of them, but we were able to get through the quest with not as much pain as we could have.
Yeah, you ran into that issue, not necessarily RMT bots, but you ran into that issue a lot in Star Wars Galaxies too, because like a lot of those older games, you had very free use macro systems with loop commands. So you could
right.
And with targeting commands, so you could in theory, grind AFK.
Right.
But like all the best grinding points were also used for quests at the era that I played the game.
Right.
So like it was actually amended into the end user legal agreement that it's not against the rules to use AFK macros as long as it's not interfering with another player's ability to complete a quest.
Right.
So that was their legal solution for if someone has to contact customer service.
Right.
That person, right to complete their quest is clearly prioritized over the AFKer's right to grind for drops or XP or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and so I mean that's a lot of times, and like just talking about customer service in general, customer service is expensive. It's basically it's an expense that frankly a lot of developers don't want to have to deal with. Like the more that something requires customer service intervention, the less people kind of like it. Like, less developers really like it because that's a cost.
That doesn't get them a whole much.
Right. And so
go ahead.
And so basically when you start talking about RMT bots, this is the main problem that developers have with RMT bots, is it's basically ruining the experience. It's ruining somebody's experience. It's not that it's not necessarily that they're cheating and getting something that they didn't deserve, because in theory you could have a friend do the same thing that an RMT bot does. You could just have a friend that goes and farms up a whole lot of gold for you, and you buy them lunch or whatever.
Right.
They can't, the developers can't stop that type of transaction from happening. But if the friend's being an asshole and farming gold in a way that makes it so it's hard for other people to kind of enjoy the game, that's where the problem starts.
Right. And I remember I'm trying to remember if it was in 14 the developers had just revised their policy about RMTs or changed some language in their policy about RMTs or whatever. And there's just somebody in my guild or my free company that was freaking the heck out because they were like, oh my god, am I doing something that could be RMT? Oh my god. And everyone in the free company was just like, just relax.
Right. They're not going to come after you for grinding money for your character. They're trying to kind of make sure that the people that basically are kind of ruining the experience for other people.
Right. And I think the thing that they were figuring out, they one of their friends paid them gil to cut their lawn or something like that.
Right.
And we're just don't worry about it. In 14, the only way you can get in trouble, and I do have friends that have had this happen, where they had gold that originated from an RMT.
Right.
And so the devs would trace the gil and
right.
that amount of skill was removed from their account without warning.
Right.
I've had friends have that happen a couple of times, but like that's whatever. Like if the devs want to be, strict about that, it's what can you do?
Right. I mean, and yeah, it's. I mean, the problem you run into, and like this is like one of my favorite phrases, like code can't determine intent.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't tell the difference. Like the difference even in legal terms, like the difference between basically like a gift and money laundering is is sometimes pretty hard to kind of like make a distinction about.
And that's why the go-to phrase for laundering money is, it was a gift.
Right, exactly. But but now but then the government kind of tax.
So you
like, okay, well, you didn't pay taxes on it, so.
Right. Well, oh god, I just had like a Shawshank Redemption moment in my brain. Well, the law allows for a one-time gift of up to $30,000 from a spouse, tax exempt. Oh boy.
Right. But yeah, so but yeah, I mean that's kind of part of what they have to. And again, like the big problem here is that the more time you have to put into fighting RMT in order to kind of keep the experience, good for most of your players, is the less time you're actually making content that new content, new stuff that people actually want to play. And like no developers like, yay, I get to do stuff that helps me detect RMT, gold selling bots or whatever. Like no developers excited about this. Developers get excited about creating new things and making making games and making fun things.
And not getting yelled at by the players.
Right. Well, there's gonna be some players gonna be unhappy with you. If your goal is never to be yelled at by players, the only solution
business.
is basically don't start. don't become a game developer. No matter what you do, someone somewhere is going to hate it.
Or at least be the guy in the back room that no one talks to.
Right. I mean, like talking to players is a skill you have to cultivate.
Well, I was thinking like the Blizzard developers.
Right. Well, I mean, Blizzard kind of gets away with it because they
have so many.
Well, I mean, they have so many, and they can kind of like they don't need the they already have all the PR they want from
existing.
Right, basically, from the games they've already developed. So.
I mean, like, just speaking marketing in general, like Blizzard has such a good track record with marketing. It's scary.
Right.
Like they managed to make, and I'm not even talking about like World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is just in a league of its own for marketing, but like Overwatch is such of a well-marketed game, and they done such a good job with it. Like they made people excited about arena shooter characters.
Right.
Like, and some of them are like no, I can't even say that. I was gonna say they're generic, but no, there's not really a super generic character in Overwatch.
Mean, they rely on certain archetypes that are pretty common. Yeah. I mean, but that's that's kind of like what everybody does. Everybody kind of has we'll make this type of game or this type of character.
Right, but they've covered their bases to give every character like a backstory and a personality and a meta story of how they're related to all the other characters, and that gives all the players like this, the players that are looking for this kind of stuff, like a connection to this character that otherwise you'd be like, okay, it's a monkey.
Right. It's a hamster and a ball.
Right. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
That fear.
My friends hated that hamster.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just like, they're just pandering to the furry audience. I mean, it's fine. Oh, I'm sorry, am I not supposed to talk about furries on my channel?
Yeah, I was gonna say, there you go, I would mention the F word again.
My bad. Yeah, let's talk about the business models of furries.
Well, I mean, like, you know, you can talk about, kind of, you know, finding your niche and catering to it. I mean, like, you know, if you make a game that, you know, caters to a specific audience like furries, you know, like, it makes sense to make a game like that. The problem you run into, of course, is like, you know, like when you have kind of the negative backlash.
Right. Hey, kind of like Face Rig.
Yeah.
Caters to furries. Tell me I'm wrong.
But yeah, it's like, but you know, there's been games.
Sorry.
You have done anthropomorphic, you know, type of animals and.
Star Fox.
Right. I mean, like, you know, like, you know, you hesitate to call, you know, Star Fox an explicitly furry game, but you know, sure, there's probably some fandom out there that, you know, Nintendo doesn't want to talk about.
Like, have you been on Tumblr?
No, I value like the last little bits of sanity I have left.
Okay, let's talk about the blue hedgehog in the room.
Oh god.
Hey, I just read. It's a
Don't. There's no joy down this corridor.
Pumpkin.
Yes.
I can't even finish my thought.
Thank you, Pumpkin. You displayed more wisdom in just, you know, what is that? Eight icons than Mulgrim has all night. So
no, I just wanted to say that Sonic CD came out 25 years ago. So that means Amy Rose is legal officially. And has been for several years, so people can fuck off.
It's not time to go back and write the fanfic and not feel guilty.
It validates all the... Oh, God. Okay, so if you play Sonic Adventure and you actually pay attention to the model animations, there are so many panty shots of Amy Rose. I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just stating a fact that the developers were obviously pandering to a certain audience.
And you had to look, didn't you?
I found a video on...
You're the victim here, huh?
Yeah. Like, I needed eye bleach afterwards. Or brain bleach, even.
Just dunk your whole head in. Just, like, get a big bucket, fill it with bleach, dunk your whole head in. You'll be fine.
And hold it.
Exactly. Hold it until it stops burning. That's how you know it's working.
Oh, my.
Don't do that, kids. Seriously, don't.
No.
That's terrible advice. On advice of my counsel, I've
Right.
do not dunk your head.
I need to get a disclaimer, flash screen.
Warning: in this video, we've talked about dunk your head in bleach. Do not attempt at home.
This video is for entertainment purposes only. Please,
Right.
please seek any medical advice from your doctor or the toll-free number of the CDC.
Yeah.
Let's just use that as a disclaimer for every video, even if we're not talking about ducking your face in bleach. Like, due to the content of this video, please contact the CDC for further information.
or like consultation.
Oh my goodness.
They're terrible people.
So going back to the topic on hand, Star Wars Galaxies.
Right.
So, for anyone that's not familiar with Star Wars Galaxies, it was one of my first MMOs. It's very, very special to me, especially since I'm a Star Wars nerd. So Star Wars Galaxies had kind of a rigid lifespan, where it started out as following the EverQuest style of MMO, where like you didn't have level ups in the game, you had skill ups, where the more you use a particular type of skill, the better it would become.
So the game actually had a very specific had a very specific kind of like design idiom to it, where it was supposed to be kind of like a blend of EverQuest and Ultima Online. That's basically where the skill up kind of system kind of came from originally. Was heavily inspired by Ultima Online, which used a skill-based system.
Right. So like you choose to start off as like a medic or see, I didn't play that on live, but I have played private servers that use that era. So I am somewhat familiar. Like you'd start off as playing as like a medic or a marksman or a whatever.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hybrid type system where you had kind of a class that you would you had kind of a class, and then like each class had kind of a general set of skills.
And then you could evolve into like more advanced classes based off of which skills you leveled up. Where like you get, like if you start as like a field medic, if you start as a medic, you could become a doctor, which was like a pure heal buffer, or you could become a combat medic, which had more combat skills involved. It was more of a it almost turned tanky with that. Or you could like do like 2 or 3 other variants in between, but those were like the 2 extremes. And so how long did that last? It was about a year or 2 before they changed it.
I don't remember. I want to say it was longer than that, but like I don't remember all the dates very well. So
yeah, I think it was anywhere between a year or 3 years, I want to say.
We almost ran an auction.
Yeah.
Excitement.
Well,
I'll pop a couple.
Okay. I've just been running around, to be honest.
Yeah, I was playing around with the one room where you can drop the vehicle to open up the secret area.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So So basically, you had the new game the new combat system was the first one.
Yeah, the combat update.
Yeah. And then basically, you had the new game experience later.
Which, what that did was the new combat update changed the way that the combat system worked to. I forget exactly what that update did, to be honest, because they both correlated with each other.
Right. Well, the original combat system had 3 pools. It had ham, health, action, and mind.
Right.
And I think the combat update basically got rid of that.
It removed mind and gave health and stamina.
Right. And so kind of the original kind of idea behind the combat was that you had basically like health, action, and mind basically all were fuel for some abilities, and basically were also kind of hit point bars. And so, like, if you so it's kind of there was a bit of tension between the Juggernaut's in that area back there, by the way.
Right.
Unless you killed him already.
I'm not sure. Yeah, so like the action bar would be your resource pool for your physical abilities, and the mind would be your ability to concentrate.
Oh, there's the Juggernaut.
And perform them consecutively, if I remember correctly. It's like the action and mind kind of work hand in hand with each other.
Right. And so yeah, I mean, so looking at it from a business point of view, yeah, like a lot of there's changes, but they were kind of felt as being necessary in order to increase the popularity. I mean, and it's kind of like already kind of talk about like licensing. So basically, licensing and because essentially, like, since it's a Star Wars game, there was kind of certain expectations about for it. And when basically Star Wars Galaxy kind of like did its basically did as well as it was going to be, like, kind of the philosophy was, okay, well, we did the best we could. That's about the limit of the popularity of MMOs. Good job all around, But then World of Warcraft came out, and suddenly everybody's like, well, wait a second, like, like World of Warcraft got over 1 million subscribers.
Why don't we?
Right, exactly. And so, like, like, then the licensing became. I mean, because, like, when you have a big popular license like Star Wars, not only do you kind of like have, not only do you like want to kind of have to, not only do you have to kind of keep track of how much money you're making, you also have to kind of worry about essentially the quality of the game. Because, like, if somebody takes, like, for example, Star Wars and makes a terrible Star Wars game of it, well, that hurts the brand.
And LucasArts did not stand for that at all.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, like, obviously, this is and they didn't want it to feel like like this was a substandard game. So yeah, they kind of had this attitude about. And this is like, based on, I kind of heard this through secondary channels and whatnot. So this isn't like an official position, but, like, essentially the expectation was, well, something needs to change in order to make this a worthy Star Wars game, because a Star Wars game shouldn't be, should be one of the more popular ones, one of the more popular games.
So one of the big changes that they did that upset the community entirely was they removed the skill system and implemented a more Warcraftian class system.
Right. And they kind of made try to make the game feel a little bit more like, a heroic cinematic experience. The original game kind of was basically kind of, a little derisively called an Aunt Beru simulator. Aunt Beru being, of course, Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen being Luke Skywalker's relatives that he's living with at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of like the a little bit of the influence of Ultima Online, where it was seen as a world, like, this is a game for people who wanted to inhabit the Star Wars universe. Not just people who wanted to, like, be Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader, running around with a glow stick and going vroom 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 vroom.
Yeah, the people that did want that had to freaking earn it.
Right. Well, or more appropriately play other games. I mean, Jedi Knight and a lot of other games kind of like gave that experience. And And so the idea was, like I can mention before, the kind of the duality between MMOs as games and MMOs as worlds. So Star Wars Galaxy was basically kind of was intended to be more of a world thing where you go and live in the Star Wars universe. But then so then basically they kind of figure out, well, that's not as popular as being a theme park, being more game-like. And so they kind of like retooled the game in order to focus on that more of a theme park experience.
And one of the more popular features that they added was the space combat, which I still miss.
Right. And so but it's kind of a tough tough. Like I said, so this is kind of like an interesting intersection because you have licensing, basically where you're gonna have licensees breathing down your neck. You have game development where you have to kind of make decisions that might piss off one group, with the hopes of trying to kind of appeal to a larger group. Because a lot of people, even developers, talked at the time, the way they put it was kind of dancing with the group that brought you. Like if you go to a dance and you bring a girl, you want to dance with her, don't ditch her and go dancing with other people. Because basically a lot of the old the players of the original versions of the game, kind of legitimately or not, felt like they were kind of cast aside because they weren't important enough.
Mm-hmm. And even the people that still played with it, I joined a month after. Ow, that hurt.
It's time to extract here soon.
Yeah, maybe.
We're at 50 minutes, so. We also just crossed the 3 hour threshold, so I'm sure people are kind of tired of listening to us blather.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just kind of holding out for the 3 hour mark, to be honest.
Right. But yeah, and so so the basic kind of the attitude of we're not important enough, and the problem that you have is for a lot of MMOs had this kind of philosophy of it was the first impression that really mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was unlikely anybody who's gonna anybody who didn't like the original version of Star Wars Galaxies was going to give it an honest chance to basically to try it again after a new combat upgrade. I want to say the numbers kind of bore that out, where they really didn't get. Oh, we need to get out.
Yeah, let's extract. And your audio is kind of a little messy.
Okay.
Yeah, you totally jump scared me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just, ooh, that was a little scary. But the question though is that the game, I would get in arguments with people in the game because I'd never played the original version, and then I'm a lesser person for never experiencing the original.
Right. For understanding the glory of the original.
Right. And but I would always counter argue with people saying, yeah, but the game has lived longer in this version than the version that you know.
Right.
So would the game have lasted as long as it did if they hadn't changed it? Because that game, I mean, I wouldn't say it was a failure by any means. It lasted, a relatively healthy life for an MMO.
Right.
I think it had the lifespan of about 9 years or so, which, I mean, that's not horrible.
I mean, that's pretty good for. Keep in mind that back then we kind of had the philosophy that the MMOs never died. And when I bought Meridian 59 from 3DO, a lot of the developers I talked to were oh yeah, of course, MMOs don't die. They just yeah, of course you're gonna buy it and run it. But then like you said, a lot of times the reality is much more messy. You have licensing and all that other things, which is why we don't have Star Wars Galaxies and why we won't have WildStar here soon.
And The Matrix Online is another
Yeah.
lost MMO.
Right. Another one where you have kind of the messy
Licensing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this is a good place to call it.
Yep. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I know it's not exactly the most exciting of a topic, but something I have a lot of experience with.
Yeah. I mean, I had fun talking about it. I don't know if everyone enjoyed listening, but I mean, they're still here, so.
Right. We still have some people.
So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you had fun. We'll try to come up with something interesting to talk about next week. We'll see. We've been playing around with some ideas, so maybe. Oh yeah, you didn't tell your joke.
Oh. Well, yeah, you mentioned that like a lot of people said George Lucas himself was the one that signed the death warrant for Star Wars Galaxies, and I joked it was Order 67 after Order 66 when he killed all the Jedi, then he killed the MMO.
Ha 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 ha. I laughed way harder the first time. Okay.
Yeah, you had to be there.
Dejar was asking to link the video in the blog so that they can comment there.
Okay, yeah. We're still kind of trying to find our feet. So the goal is like, once we kind of get a steady rhythm for this, like we'll come up with a topic over the weekend. I'll write a blog post on my blog at psychochild.org to touch upon the topic in general, and then on Tuesdays we'll kind of come here and discuss it. And then I can link when Mulligram uploads and puts the video on demand up, I can link it on my blog, and we can continue the discussion with more comments and whatnot.
Yep. Which all the video on demand is available as soon as I end the stream. So, yeah, that should be pretty easy to set up. I always like to end my streams with rating another streamer, give them some attention and some love, which I will find somebody momentarily. So I do also archive my videos on YouTube. I still need to set up a link for that. I also do broadcasts on Twitter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Mulgrim at Mulgrim425. I'm still working on getting links set up for that. I've been kind of lazy. So if you have a hard time keeping up when we go live, I have a bot that broadcasts that all over Twitter. So you can follow me there as well if you want to keep up with that. Let's see here. Who is streaming? Pumpkin with your faces. Don't act like I can't see your faces. I see them. I see them all. The Rev Rippo is a pretty fun guy. He's actually playing Fortnite, which I don't play, but he's fun to watch. So, we'll rate him, give him some love, and we will see you next week with a new topic that we will decide the day before.
Have a good night.
So, thank you all. I will see you next week.